Okay, here's what's going to happen. This is how I'm going to be doing the audio for this episode 3 discussing healthcare. And I want to talk about facts. I'm using an external mic, a non-headset mic. I'm going to check that this is discussing healthcare. And I want to talk about facts. I'm using an external mic working as normal. I'm going to scroll the chat window where I can see it. And then here we go. All right, so hopefully the audio wasn't too bad there when I was close to the mic. I've been playing around with that. So one thing in the debates that I noticed is people, we just need to share all the little facts and numbers and the division and not just use something as a 5 and nobody knows what it is. So specifically in healthcare, but in general, just the discussion, we should all get common facts on the table that we should agree with. And there's ways to do this. The fact can't have a narrative built into it. It's just something that you can agree with, and you can always kind of backstep a little bit. Like if I say, hey, this group ABC came out with a study that says, the percentage is 55. And you say, well, I don't believe that that's a fact, that the percentage is 55. Then it's still a fact that this group says that it is, right? So you can acknowledge that at least there's a group saying it, and then you're bound to an argument about why you're rejecting that fact. And we're still going to get down into the weeds and end up having a lot of people disagree. Because, it's frustrating to argue with people that are uninformed, but it's naive to think that if they were better informed, they'd agree with you. Generally speaking, that's not necessarily true. Now, if you get all the facts on the table, some people will change their mind based on having a common understanding of the facts, but it can go both ways, because the positions often have been informed by people that did know the facts. Now, those people aren't always honest, and this is another reason to get the facts on the table, because if your narrative is true, valid, I should say, then the facts will support it. Now, how could there be more than one? Well, because once the facts are on the table, we could agree on all 6 facts, but we're going to weigh them differently in that, these 3 facts present a risk that I'm averse to, but these 3 facts present a risk that I'm comfortable with, whereas for someone else it would be vice versa. And so we're going to end up disagreeing. So my point is, everybody should be brave enough to just try to get common facts. And so I'm just going to talk about some very simple ones, and I'll disclose my opinion on some of these, but we're not even going to get in very deep. This is just a basic one that came up in the debates, comes up on TV all the time, and that is about the healthcare costing $30 trillion, or Medicare for All costing $30 trillion. Now, $30 trillion is a lot of money, but it's also out of the scope. And what bothers me is they never say that that's a figure over 10 years. This comes from, I was thinking of looking it up, but the Mercator Institute, something the Koch brothers actually give to this, conservative think tank that did a study. They said it's going to cost $30 trillion over 10 years. And so it's a fact that they said that. And it's a fact that their general bias is towards conservatism, and they weren't trying to make Medicare for All look good. There's also other details in that study, and what Medicare would be, and the reasons why they would do it over 10 years, because it's, there's ramp-up costs, and then it would balance out. And I just think that on CNN, and especially in the debates, when people are saying $30 trillion, especially since there's people that are defending the idea, you would say that that's over 10 years. Not like it's going to make a difference in the argument, but just because that's the fact. That's a basic fact. If you say somebody was going 50, people assume it's miles per hour, because that's how we measure speed and 50 is in the range of what you might think a car was doing, and so you make a few inferences. When it comes to a cost like $30 trillion, obviously, to me at least, that leaving the number off would mean it's a yearly number. And that's obviously it's not. It's a 10-year number. So you could say $3 trillion a year on average. Or you could just say $3 trillion a year, and there's a little bit of discrepancy in what you're saying, but basically the yearly number is $3 trillion. Now another thing is these guys, I forget, Biden was one of them, asking where would we get the money? This Medicare for All is going to cost $30 trillion. Where are we going to get the money? Well, the same study that's being quoted on the $30 trillion says that we're going to already spend $32 trillion, right? So what that means is, on a factual basis, again, it doesn't make you support or change your mind on this whatsoever, I don't think, by acknowledging or putting your own words on the way of expressing this. Right now, everybody that's spending money to their insurance company, if they gave that to Medicare as a fee, to Medicare, that would cover Medicare for all. So that's where the money is going to come from. From the people. No, everybody's saying the money has to come from somewhere. So those are facts, that the money is going to come from us, and that the proposition is that the money that's going now to insurance companies, it's going to go straight to Medicare. So again, that shouldn't really bias people one way or another, because a lot depends on, well, what do you think of Medicare's ability to do the paperwork necessary? So another fact of the matter is these distinctions between different kinds of systems. Now, ever since the 90s, when Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were trying to get a single-payer system, I actually like a managed market. So a regulated, you could call it market, but it's a managed market where you could have, the private options, but you would have a public option, right? So I would have been happy with, it's going into the red, but I would have been happy with, just getting a public option in the ACA. Because I think the public option provides a baseline, and it guarantees that you won't lose all of your insurance companies in the state. You'll at least have the public option, and it'll pick up, where private companies are deciding they don't want to do business or whatever. And yet the fact that it's a market means that you can get co-ops and all kinds of other organizations, groups of doctors, AAA or whomever would be able to take part in basically the paperwork, which can be optimized and whatnot. On the other hand, Medicare's been around for a while, and it's pretty good at doing paperwork with a low overhead. And when you have a Medicare for all, basically you got a single payer. So there's a word for that, a monopsony, I think it is, where you have one buyer, right? A monopoly is one seller. A monopsony is one buyer. And it's possible to control prices when you have that. And if you're a private company, you could use that unfairly. If you're the government and you're trying to buy a service, you can keep the cost down to whatever it takes to get people to provide the service. Now, it's a single payer system, and that's distinct from a government health service. Like in the UK, the government health service, the government actually runs or owns, you could say, they operate the hospitals. Now, there's been some privatization, I guess, over there or whatnot, but the basic UK health system was the government is actually providing the health care and hiring the lawyers and all of that, not just regulating it. But a single payer system is not like that at all. You have private practices and doctors in the private practices, and that's all private. If you add these facts together, you can see why people that don't want or that argue against single payer is because of the monopsony. They can set prices that they're willing to pay. However, if no doctors are willing to give those services, or the services rendered are, killing people, which you find out statistically after at least some period of time, then there's going to be a feedback from the patients and whatnot. But there could be crises and stuff there where, the government, because of some political reason, won't sufficiently fund some needed practice. So that's just by way of saying that these facts, they lend themselves to arguments of caution about these sorts of things. Now, my final thing, just as a disclosure of my own opinion, is that although I prefer in principle a public option multi-payer system, I think what we found with the ACA is that, which had several flaws, one not being multi-payer, and then two, penalizing, making people pay to not have health care. Now, that mandate made huge profits for the health insurance companies, right? Because the government, like with auto insurance, when the government started saying you had to have auto insurance, it created a business. It was good for business for auto insurance, and that's basically the ACA model. And they just misbehave. They're making more money, and then they still sabotage the system. They're making more money than ever, but they can't serve maybe a more rural state. And so they're just not to be trusted. I'd rather have a single payer system, and then we can inch back into having private insurance as they come into the supplemental market. Because that's another issue, of course, is, and I forget if this study we're talking with the 30 trillion, if it's, like Medicare for All from Bernie's bill is not current Medicare. They beef up Medicare, and it's got vision and dental and things like that. So, but let's say we just give everybody a bronze package, Medicare as it is now, then there will be a market for, the Medicare Advantage kind of thing, like Harris wants that system. And that's fine to me, as long, if somebody that doesn't have the advantage is not going to die, but maybe they wait longer on the phone or whatever, within reason, then, as long as it's not fake, then this is the guarantee that I'm trying to obtain. And, I'm ready to give my more than $1,000 a month to Medicare. I do trust them more than others. I've always had good health insurance when I've been doing this business for 5 years, so I just buy it independently, which again, Obamacare did achieve that for me. That was a major benefit, because otherwise it used to be very difficult to buy it as an individual and be an entrepreneur. But I've had very good healthcare. I've had healthcare back in the 90s where there was zero copays for even prescriptions, and $1 ones and $5 ones. And I would say that I've been through a lot of different insurance companies. Companies I've been at, when you change companies, you have to change, and companies I've been at have switched providers, and I've been at companies that have multiple providers, and I switch between the companies providing, and I switch between HMOs and PPOs. And I would say that's like dealing with how airlines have become, how cable companies are, how phone companies are. It is a pain in the ass dealing with them, and I would rather just deal with Medicare. And if I'm having a problem, then there's probably a blog tracking it, and and it ultimately is responsible to the voters. So, like Social Security, I think this is the kind of thing that we don't need a profit motive to generate it. On the other hand, doing paperwork, imagine we had a system like this before computers. Well, a multi-payer system, a private company, probably be the one to try to innovate with computers and things like that. So, there's ways to do paperwork and to think about data or something that could reduce the costs further. And I would like to have that option. So, but we can go to that after. Right now, I pretty much think a Medicare for all is the best option because we can't trust our current businesses, and they sometimes the government, when infrastructure becomes sophisticated or it has evolved, into just a part of the culture that is required, like healthcare, you need to cut out the middleman. Now, I have a comment, and it says it's from Anti-Gaia. Why aren't you doing Hangouts anymore? Well, I heard that they're stopping the Hangouts, so there's that. Well, I just wasn't into it anymore. I had to spend every Sunday and tell family and stuff, and it's just like, yeah, I needed to regroup and whatnot. And now I guess we need some other sort of solution, like people calling in on Skype or something. I think, I'm not sure Hangout. I mean, actually, I could stream a Hangouts by doing desktop audio, but the people in the Hangouts can't hear the desktop audio, which sort of sucks. It'd be nice to be able to play videos and all hear them. But whatever. So I don't really think this will happen, but I'm hoping, I'm not even hoping. I'm imagining a situation in which people comment on facts about healthcare. In other words, statements that people that will end up disagreeing with you can see as neutral, narrative neutral, and we'll weigh them different. Then we don't have to agree on the characterizations of the facts, but things like we should all be able to agree that who would be paying for Medicare for all? The American people. Where would the money come from the American people? There's a baseline, but this isn't a fact, but the baseline is if we all that are paying insurance companies right now paid that to Medicare, Medicare does the paperwork, pays the doctors, and we could agree that that's a conceivable idea based on those facts, but probably, there's other changes that it might change who pays for it. For example, Bernie, I forget which he wants to tax high frequency stock transactions. So people that trade, buy and sell stocks every hour or something, it would be useful to slow that down. We could slow down by taxing it, and so maybe my costs would go down, but maybe my costs would go up because of some other thing, or he raises, some other tax. The adjustments, again, it's not a part of the facts. Those are part of what we can discuss. But, we would be paying it to American people, for example. I mean, that's just obvious, right? But people aren't mentioning it. It's just like these obvious things are the things that we all admit that those are the common facts we're looking for. Dinah Katz Loves Me is here. I was just about to leave, but let's read. Dinah Cat Loves Me's. Hey, Dinah Cat Loves Me, by the way. Okay, we're on the same page, but $1,000 a month is not what you should be paying Medicare unless you make $200K a year. Well, it's just gone crazy. And, I'm on the bronze plan and stuff, and yeah, that's what they cost. It's just a family of 3. So, but I agree, I think it would go down because, there's various things. Just the whole ridiculousness of how long this Medicare drug price thing is gone on, I mean, just the difference in price between here and Canada or other places, even when they're manufactured here or manufactured there, it doesn't matter. It's our market demand, supply demand. It's like, this is not something where the law of supply and demand. Yeah, people demand to have life-saving drugs, so you can charge more in America where there's no regulation to say otherwise. Yeah, well, I was all happy about just doing those kind of regulations, but at this point, we can't trust these companies to take part. We need something, I think, more radical. But then when the single payer is in place, I imagine we can get really good health care and still reduce our prices. Since we're coming from this good health care is available, but they're overcharging for it, and then also hospitals, when they overcharge things and aspirins, it's because they're making up for the money they don't get paid at all. And on Medicare for all, they're for sure going to end up getting paid. and they have a reason to go ahead and do that efficiently and everything else. So, all right. Hopefully the audio was okay. I like not having to have a headset. I still have to put it on to listen to things, because if I play it out loud, it'd echo. But I can just put on the ear set, and it's possible to listen to things. All right. Cheers.